Hello and welcome back. We are in for an exciting time here. I realized in publishing my last video that I did not talk through the RFP, and I think that this is a very important part of the grant writing process. And I also wanted to go through this again because as I'm sort of sitting down, I have a long block of time to work on writing today and tap into the more creative writing side. I thought it would be good to just step back again, look at the bigger picture of what's being emphasized within this particular project so that I can think about the framing that will go into the written pieces of this application. So I want to take some time today to walk you through what were the questions that I was asking myself as I started to look through this RFP the very first time to understand if it would be the right fit for the Regional Food Council. So the RFP stands for Request for Proposals. This is a term that is thrown around a lot in the grant writing space. I'm trying to think, there's another acronym that's often thrown out there too that's basically saying the same thing. It's just their application, the description of the application itself. And so this will give you details about, as it says within this table of contents, you'll get to see the project overview, funding, what is eligible and not eligible in terms of who can apply, and then also looking at the actual projects. What can you do? What are you not allowed to do? How can you spend your money? How are you not supposed to spend your money? And then what are their priorities for this funding source? What's really cool too is that you'll often include, you see this application score sheet. This is a really good thing. I'm going to take a look at this again today to understand specifically how is this going to be graded, because essentially they're going to download a bunch of copies, everyone's submissions. They're going to hand it over to reviewers that have signed up for this opportunity, and then they're basically just going to be cross-referencing the content with the rubric. And so that's really important for me to keep in mind as a grant writer, and for you to keep in mind as a grant writer as well, is the end goal, what's going to be happening with this information, and how are people going to be using it. There's some other things here, these exhibits. These are just like appendices, so extra information that might be helpful. But one thing that's super important, and I definitely failed to do this, is the only way that you can apply for this particular application is through the Swift supplier portal. And this is set up by the state of Minnesota, and you wouldn't be able to do that properly. Like, I didn't check with one of our project members early on in this process to say, hey, do you have this information? I just assumed that they did, given the fact that they are working under the umbrella of a county. And so that was a little bit of an oh shit moment last week when we met with our team, because I have an account and I was able to get into the system, and even without an account you can still view all of these things. But that was really important for us to be able to talk about. Okay, so getting now into project overview. Minnesota's climate is changing. Actions of organizations and individuals across the state are contributing to these changes. Okay, so they're talking about climate change is happening. Yes. It's affecting our land. Yes. The trends identified are going to result in warmer and wetter weather, damaging rains, cold weather warming, more extreme heat waves, extended periods of drought. Awesome. So exciting. Communities across our state are planning for climate action, taking steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To reduce our state's climate goals, communities need to do even more to reduce this climate pollution. Communities can also increase their resilience through planning and implementation projects that help adapt to the current and anticipated impacts of climate change. So I'm going to highlight this particular part because I think that that's going to be important to keep in mind. In 2022, the broad framework for our state's climate action moving forward, Minnesota's Climate Action Framework, was published by Minnesota state agencies. The framework guides work across the state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to our changing climate. Okay, so they have a framework here, right? This is what we're talking about. They're referring to a planning document that they've created. Achieving the framework's goals of carbon neutrality, resilience, equity will require planning and action by many entities, including local government, community-based groups, and educational institutions. And they even give us a link to this, which is something that we can take a look at. I wonder if it's possible. For example, this is a hack that I use a lot of times when I'm trying to just like zoom into the information I want. I'm going to do Command F or Control F if you are on a PC, and I'm just going to look up agriculture, if I can spell it properly, and it comes up 12 times in this document. So this is one of the ways that when you think about connecting written documents to work that you are going to be doing, don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Leverage the work that people have already done to find what you need to. So let's see, this page in particular is part of the opportunity. Okay, so this is probably an introductory section. Many job sectors commonly considered part of the growing clean economy. Okay, agriculture being one of them. Awesome. Let's go to the next part. Then we're looking at Minnesota today. Okay, so this is probably another snapshot of like what's happening. Minnesota. Look at this. The largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions are transportation, electricity generation, and agriculture. This is working in our favor. Why? Because if agriculture is a very big source of greenhouse gas emissions, it may in fact be ranked higher as it relates to some of the other things. This stat is really interesting to me. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and then I'm just going to go back to the RFP, and I'm going to add this information as a quote, and then I'm also going to reference which page that was on, 16, because this is the kind of information that is going to help strengthen the argument for why people should support our project, right? Okay, interesting. Let's go back to the next one. Foundational steps. Key areas where the sub-cabinet agencies will work to further their understanding of the current baseline, opportunities for action, and potential costs and benefits of action. Improving our understanding in these areas will provide critical foundational understanding for future action. The following are priorities for further exploration. Natural and working lands data. The MPCA, Department of Natural Resources, or DNR, Department of Agriculture, MDA, and you'll hear I use that acronym a lot, so I apologize. Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Department of Agriculture, MDA. The Board of Water and Soil Resources will work to refine and standardize methodologies for tracking greenhouse gas emissions and carbon sequestration and storage on our landscapes. This is an emerging field of understanding, and Minnesota has an opportunity to be a leader. Okay, also fascinating. I'm not really sure if that's going to be valuable, but I'm still going to save it just in case. Because it could be one of those things where, like, later on, for example, we come back and say, these guys are working on building a framework, we want to help them. Or, for example, we have to talk about stakeholders. The Board of Water and Soil Resources is one that, within the work that I've been doing with this Regional Food Council, we haven't necessarily built the relationships that I think need to be there. Bowser is doing some amazing work with, especially in the space of water quality. And one thing that I want to point you to, One Water, One Plan, I'm just Googling that within Minnesota. In 2012, Minnesota State Legislature, through One Watershed, One Plan legislation, authorized Bowser, that's the BWSR, Board of Water and Soil Resources, to develop and implement a comprehensive watershed management plan approach. The resulting approach coordinates and consolidates water plans on a watershed basis instead of political boundaries. This is super cool, and I love the fact that they've taken that approach, because so much of our work in the past has been just related to those political boundaries. So I had the opportunity to actually participate in one of the planning processes for this as a facilitator, to help people get clarity over the planning process about some of the action items and goals and priorities and that kind of thing. So one of the things that's part of this that you can use as a resource for any of your work that you might be doing on your farm, within the food system, is know that this is out there for you. I'm trying to see where specifically they have, so they have a list of participating watersheds, and then this particular part would be interesting to look at. So approved plans, you could look to see that what's the watershed that you are within, and then you can find that. I think maybe this Buffalo Red River one was one that was in my region. Yes, West Otter Tail. So let's take a look at this, because this may have some stats about what's going on. And obviously this is a really long document, right? 168 pages. But these folks here are very important stakeholders, these project partners in particular. Very important, and I'll zoom in a little bit. These guys have a vested interest in the success of the work of our regional food council and our regional food systems work, because they're looking at land management practices and the way that water is coming into, moving through, and leaving our watershed or our region. So these guys, I'm just going to go ahead and copy as well, because, and I'm going to just say stakeholders, and then I'm also going to just copy the link to this plan because it might be helpful. Okay, so that's there. And then basically what I want to look at, I need to see, and you see they had a lot of people involved in this. They had a policy committee, they had an advisory committee. It was quite a fun process to be involved in. They have a bunch of definitions and acronyms because they use a lot of those. And then it does look like they've got an executive summary, but they even have measurable goals within some of these plans as well. Let's see, wide diversity of natural resources from the lakes and streams to forest, prairies, and wetlands. It's at the headwaters of the Red River Basin, but looks much different than the rest of the Red River Basin because of its many lakes, intact wetlands, and forested uplands. Most of these natural resources are in good condition. This plan focuses on prevention of further degradation and protecting outstanding resources, as evidenced in the watershed vision statement below. Natural beauty and diversity of water and land in the Otter Tail watershed is attractive to residents and tourists because of its recreational opportunities, farming, forests, and wildlife. We strive to sustain this diversity of riches for future generations to enjoy. So this is also super interesting. I want to save this particular sentence. Why? Because when we're referencing other documents and other planning processes that have taken place, a lot of money was invested in creating this document. People have done their homework. It's a data-driven process. I want to be able to explain within this particular application how we are connecting to the work that is already going on, to show people that we've also done our homework and we're well aware of the initiatives that are taking place and the investments that are happening, and that we want to serve as a bridge between all of those entities. So coming back to this, page 1, executive summary. This is one watershed, one plan, just so that that's there. And then this is also pretty cool. So you can just give a sense of, all right, within our 4-county region that we're going to be doing as part of this, that includes Clay, Otter Tail, Becker, and Wilkin counties. Now, not all of those are included in this watershed. In fact, there are probably maybe 3 or 4 different watersheds that are all within the region that we oversee. Most of this is within Otter Tail County. There's a fair chunk in Becker County, a little bit of Clay County, just like this little tiny corner. And then, well, this actually is still within Otter Tail as far as I know. This one says county lines. I'm not really sure what this one is here. It's not indicated very well, but I'm pretty sure if we look at Otter Tail County, it's this big square here. So Wilkin County isn't even included within this watershed, and that's something to take note of as we think about connecting the content of this plan. I mean, I don't think it's going to be worth our time, honestly, to look through and try to figure out all of the other ones, but it's a good start. Again, it shows that we've done our homework. So coming back to this one again, I just want to look to see if there's anything else worth pulling out. They talk a lot about their planning process, which is exciting. And then they have different scoring. Do you protect it? Do you enhance it? Or do you restore it? And then they have measurable goals: phosphorus reduction, sediment reduction, soil health, very important, groundwater protection, land protection, stream stabilization, and then implementation. So it looks like there's different funding levels for trying to do something about these particular goals. And then you've got the partnership between these different entities. That includes the Cormorant Lakes Watershed District, Becker County, Becker SWCD. I'm trying to remember what that stands for. Of course, they've got their acronyms up here. Soil and Water Conservation District is what that stands for. And then we've got more of their planning process. So then they have a narrative about what's actually happening in the region, understanding the past. They've got a map that shows impairments to the watershed. What I really want to hear about, okay, this is interesting. Agricultural practices such as cultivated crops, hay and pasture, and animal agriculture are important to the local economy of the watershed and run like a patchwork quilt between the lakes, forests, and wetlands. Animal ag includes dairy, beef, poultry, etc. Okay, most common crops grown are corn, soybean, alfalfa, and small grains. And then this gives you a snapshot of what's going on. That's kind of cool. And then this was really interesting as part of the tour that we went on for this project. It was a bus tour. We went to different parts of the watershed and talked about specifically how is it that the difference within the soils also is affecting the water quality, and how nutrients, for example, from the farms are moving through the systems. So the soil around Perham is a lot more sandy, and that's what it describes here. Throughout the central part of the watershed as well, they say that center pivot irrigation is necessary for cultivation, and that was something that they pointed out in the bus tour. Was you could see the difference in that you've got all these like irrigation pipes set up, and then we go to other parts of the region and it wasn't that way. Local soil and water conservation districts administer a program to help local producers with groundwater conservation. Irrigation can be done more precisely by improving when irrigation is applied and how it is applied. Okay, so there's some information here that could be helpful. I think this one is probably the most, just in terms of if we needed to describe what's going on in the region currently with its agricultural production, we could do that. I think that was page 20. Okay. And then again, right, we can look this up, just keep skimming. 24. Okay, there's some references. And then it looks like we start getting into focus issues. Okay, so this is really important. This is a list. Primary issues are the most important issues that will be the focus of implementation efforts in the 10-year plan. They had a high ranking in more than one planning region. The main theme of the issue statement is shown in bold text. NRCS resource concerns that align with issues are included for ease in implementation. So we've got the resource category and then the resources affected and the issue statement. So nutrient loading, wind and water erosion. Sufficient protection is needed for outstanding resources, sensitive species, untreated stormwater, groundwater quality. Soil health is important for agricultural productivity and climate change resilience. Fragmentation and loss of forests and grasslands, aquatic invasive species. And then it looks like secondary. But this is interesting because soil health comes up on as a primary issue. And then there's some other items here too. Groundwater quality for sure. Okay, so this is good to know. I'm going to copy this particular section and basically just say, and this was on page 29. So this is a primary issue that will be the focus of implementation in the next 10 years. Again, evidence that points to the need and the buy-in that we already have from area stakeholders, even if the relationship hasn't been built yet. That's key. So we're going to close those things out and we're going to come back to this one. So we had looked at a couple of options within the climate smart natural and working land section. This is a goal that they've identified. My guess is that this is similar to most planning documents where you'll have specific goals, then you'll have objectives, and then like strategies or action steps. So it's a hierarchy of the big level idea, then get a little bit more specific, and then you get even more specific to say, okay, this is specifically what we're going to be doing to address the problem. So the goal here is to enhance climate benefits by absorbing and storing carbon, reducing emissions, and sustaining resilient landscapes. And it looks like they have as one of their priority actions, expand climate resilient agriculture and forestry. And I'm going to see if there's anything else. Oh, like, this is perfect. Okay, so I really like these two actually. Invest in new markets and supply chains for crops that keep soil covered year round, and for wood products that increase carbon storage and substitute for more fossil fuel intensive materials. Then we get down and we see promote local and community-based agriculture to reduce transportation needs and increase food access, especially in underserved communities. This, my friend, is gold. Okay, so this line is from the statewide climate action plan for Minnesota, and this came from, gosh, what is that, page 33? So this will be important to cite. Why? Because this is the basis for this entire grant application. I'm going to take a break from that because I feel like I've got some really good information, and then I'm going to get back into this document itself. So, returning to the RFP. In 2023, the state legislature directed funding to MPCA to provide local climate action grants for the purpose of supporting efforts in local jurisdictions to address climate change by developing and implementing local plans of action that enable adaptation to extreme weather events and a changing climate, and a reduction of local contributions to the causes of climate change. These local climate action grants will help local communities contribute towards the goal of the framework. The law requires MPCA to give preference to proposals that seek to involve a broad array of community residents, organizations, and institutions in the local jurisdiction's efforts to address climate change. Okay, great. So I'm going to highlight this one because I think what they're pointing to is the fact that it's this effort that has to have involvement from a really wide range. They're saying broad array. People, organizations, institutions, and that is everything that our food council stands for. And that's exactly how we had to create the regional food plan in the first place, was engaging people from all over the place. The law directs the MPCA to provide technical assistance to applicants proposing to develop an action plan. Okay, that's fine. Not relevant because we already have an action plan. And then it talks about the TA, technical assistance. That's not probably relevant. Eligible grant recipients with a project work plan that includes one or more tasks to utilize this greenhouse gas emissions data will provide it the data after their grant agreement is fully executed. Okay, so this relates to one of the things I saw in the grant application earlier, where they were saying that if you're using data in order to measure the change, they ask you, do you want help to access that data or something like that? Okay, next section, funding. Approximately $2.3 million in funding is available to be awarded with the potential for additional funding. Grant projects must be completed no later than June 30th, 2025. Okay, maximum grant is $50,000. There's no minimum. And the grantee requirements vary by the amount of the grant award. Okay, minimum match requirements for activities taking place in a local jurisdiction whose population equals or exceeds 20,000 is 50% of the grant amount in local funds. In local funds, what do they mean by that? That would be really interesting to look at, just because we were talking about match requirements in our staff meeting, and I want to know what is eligible for that. The minimum match requirement for activities taking place in a local jurisdiction whose population is under 20,000 is 5%, either local funds or equivalent in-kind services. Got it. Local jurisdiction is defined by the type of eligible applicant as detailed in Section 3. Okay, so that's going to be relevant for us. Grantees will be expected to track and report all match provided by kind and source, even if the amount exceeds the minimum match requirement. That is fine. Reimbursement schedule. Grant funding for eligible costs of the project will be reimbursed during and upon completion of the approved project with approved invoices. Okay, reimbursed. This is key, and this is something that I would say is one of the most challenging aspects of applying for a state level grant. I will say it is very important that you recognize that your local bank can be a huge resource with regards to this challenge. If you don't have cash on hand to be able to pay out for services, anything else where it's like you're gonna have to put the money out and then you get paid back from the government, my recommendation is that you go to the bank. If you need to, ask for even a letter saying, if I'm awarded this grant, I will provide a line of credit or even like a loan, but ideally a line of credit. Actually, I'm not even sure. I wouldn't be able to give you the best advice on that, but go to your bank, ask them, what can you do for me? Because I'm expecting this money to come in, but it's only awarded on a reimbursement basis, and see if they can work with you to find a solution. I've seen in a lot of the grant applications I reviewed that even if people don't have the money on hand, they've included a letter from their bank saying, this person is in good financial standing, and if they're awarded the grant, we will provide them with a loan or a line of credit, whatever it is, up to this amount so that they can take it on. So that's something I would recommend. I've also had to do that myself because I'm currently on a grant where that was the situation. I was awarded the funds, but it's on a reimbursement basis and it's done quarterly. So with a 60-day invoice turnaround, the funds aren't even sent back to me. So it could be basically 5 months before you're paid. That's really hard, right? That is not easy for anyone's cash flow. So just be real with yourself, ask for help. And if you want to dig into that more, if you have questions about that, leave them in the comments. And I would love to, if there's enough interest, I can make a video about that and we can dig into it. Okay, invoices for expenses incurred may be submitted as frequently as monthly, maybe accompanied by an email update about the status of the project. Lovely. They're encouraged to submit their first invoice no later than 6 months or midway through the project, whichever comes first. That seems fine. Final invoice for payment of remaining grant funds expended by the project is required to be submitted at the completion of the project. Payment of the final 10% of grant funds will be held back until the project is completed satisfactorily and all deliverables have been submitted and approved. Okay. Section 3. Eligible and ineligible applicants. Minnesota political subdivisions, organizations exempt from taxation under 501c3 of the IRS, and educational institutions are eligible applicants. So schools, counties, it looks like cities and towns, regional development commissions, or other local political subdivisions. That's fine. So under ours, we're going to be applying through Clay County. So that should work pretty well. Eligible applicants must be located in or conduct the preponderance of the applicant's work in local jurisdiction where the proposed grant activities take place. This is fine. Okay, for applicants, which are political subdivisions as defined above, the geographic area is defined by the boundaries of that political subdivision, and the population of the local jurisdiction is the population of the political subdivision. For other eligible applicants, it's defined as a geographic area to be served by For other eligible applicants, the local jurisdiction is defined as the geographic area to be served by the focus of the proposed grant project. For example, neighborhood, campus, and the population is the population of that geographic area. Applicants must provide a population estimate with a source and or short explanation of how the estimate was created. This is really good to know because I didn't actually pay attention to this the first time I read through the RFP. So questions that I'm asking myself as I'm going through this, right? Match. Do I have funds? Do I have cash in hand? Do I have the ability to talk to a lender if I don't have cash on hand? And then we think about eligible, like what is the entity type that would be the lead organization? In this case, it's county. It would be Clay County. So they are going to have the ability to do reimbursement because of the nature of just the size of what they are. And it would also be good to know, okay, what is Clay County, Minnesota's population? because it looks like it is well over 20,000. So it doesn't even matter if we wanted to define the area of the number of people that we wanted to serve. We are subject to this particular requirement. So it doesn't even matter if we wanted to focus on one of the small communities within our region. Like, for example, Pelican Rapids has a population of about 2,500. I know that Partnership for Health has invested a lot of time and energy in supporting that community. And yet, right, that's not an option for us. So with that, we're about 30 minutes in. So I'm going to pause here. And in the next video, I will cover going through the rest of this application. It looks like we're on page 3 of 18. And we've already talked through a lot of information here. But I think that keeping these videos a little bit shorter will be helpful and make the information a bit more digestible. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back soon with another one.